Okay.
Hello and welcome. I'm Helen from Manx Lit Fest, and with me virtually this evening I have Rachel Bennett, also from Lit Fest, but now the author of many books and about to publish a second mystery book, which is coming out this Friday on Kindle.
That's
and on
correct.
the 20th of August in paperback, and it's called Little Girls Tell Tales.
That's correct.
Which I should have mentioned at the start, maybe
That's
before all of the other
You were building up
information.
to it. It was a build up. Yeah,
the big reveal. It can be pre-ordered now from the Bridge Bookshop if you don't like to read off a screen, and if you do pre-order it, you will get a signed copy, courtesy of Reiki.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Right, let's start with the boring questions.
Oh, okay, go on then.
So there's no boring questions. So just the cliche questions, really. So could you give us a summary of the book?
Yes, and it's usually about this point that I really wish I'd written down a summary so I could just read it out. I've never been very good at getting things nice and concise and pitchy, but so it's, in essence, Little Girls Tell Tales is about a young girl. She's 11 and she gets herself lost in the Curraghs, which is an area of boglands and trees and wetlands up in the north of the island. And she's gone out to play with her friends and she gets separated from them and she gets lost. And while she's wandering out there, she comes across a skeleton sunk into the bog, and it's obviously been there quite a long time. But by the time she finds her way back out of the woodlands, she can't remember where exactly it was. And when she tries to lead the police and other people in to find the body, she can't find it. And essentially no one believes her that it was there at all. Then fast forward 15 years to when she's grown up and living still in the vicinity, and someone knocks at the door and says, "Excuse me, I think that body you found back 15 years ago, it could be my sister who went missing 20 years ago, and we never found out where she went." So it's like a historical murder mystery, and they're trying to put together the pieces, and it goes from there.
Exciting. So this is your second mystery that you have had published, and the first one is sitting very nicely behind you on the shelf.
It's subtle, isn't it? It's just a complete coincidence that I decided to sit here today.
And The Flood is set in a fictional English town village.
Yes.
But this one is set back here on the Isle of Man at home.
Yes.
Why bring it back to the Isle of Man this time?
Well, the main reason was because when I was talking to people about the flood, one of the first questions they tended to ask was, "Oh, is it set on the Isle of Man?" I'd have to say no. No, sorry, it isn't.
Typical Manx people.
It is a bit of a... I mean, I do it as well. "Oh, you've written a book. Is it set on the Isle of Man?" Yeah, we all do it. So I really wanted this time to be able to say, yes, it's definitely set on the Isle of Man. And also I really wanted to use the Curraghs as a setting for a book, because it's just such an interesting, strange, sort of eerie place. And the Isle of Man is quite small and quite insular, and there's not a lot of places on the island where you can get lost, because you tend to know your way around everywhere. So I was really interested to find the Curraghs and suddenly realize, wow, you could genuinely get yourself lost in here. It's not a big area geographically, the Curraghs isn't. But because there's no landmarks, you can't really see the mountains, and it's all very flat, it is surprisingly easy to get yourself lost there. In fact, I believe your other half may have got himself lost there and inadvertently become the inspiration for this story.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds right. So was that the sort of starting point, inspiration for this whole novel, or did you already have sort of an idea of what you wanted, and then it was, this is the perfect place to set it?
I didn't really have any idea what it was going to be. It was literally when I happened to go up there for the first time, and yes, very the very nice Simon happened to take us around on a wildflower walk to show us different orchids and other flowers, and the bog bean, little white flowers that grow nowhere else on the island except there. So stop me if I'm just talking about flowers. And while we were there,
I get it all the time.
Yeah, he happened to mention, oh, one time I was up here and I was got distracted because I was following a wallaby trail. For those of you who don't know, we do have wild wallabies loose up in the Curraghs and other places around the north of the island. So he stepped off a path to go follow this wallaby trail and got himself lost for a significant portion of time before he found his way back to a road, which is very on brand for Simon.
Thank goodness he did.
Yes, thank goodness.
Yeah. So it's really exciting that there is somewhere that some of us who are reading it will recognise. I think it's quite nice to be able to go, oh, I've been there when you read a book. And I think that's going to be something that's quite exciting for a lot of local readers on the Isle of Man, and maybe people all around the world who maybe have no idea what the Isle of Man is, other than motorcycles.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. There's been some really good reviews coming in so far. It's been fantastic, and quite a few of them have said, oh, I've never heard about this part of the Isle of Man. It was really interesting to hear about somewhere new. One person described it as an international thriller, which I am delighted about. I've always wanted to write an international thriller. It's great.
There you go. Achievement unlocked.
Yeah, I'm putting that on my name badge, international thriller writer.
Lovely. So this novel also centres around female characters and sisterly relations, I'm guessing, as well.
Yes.
And which is a theme, perhaps, running through the other books as well. Is that a deliberate choice because you have so many sisters? Or is it something that's just sort of happened naturally?
I'm not completely sure. I've always liked the interaction of siblings. Just about everything I've ever written has been about siblings, because I'm not particularly good at writing, about average relationships or anything like that. It seems to be a bit tricky for me. I don't know why, but I seem to have a real problem with that side of things. But I'm really fascinated by the interactions between siblings, especially estranged siblings. And you've got I grew up in the classic golden age of EastEnders with Grant and Phil Mitchell, so they're probably to blame originally.
The Slater sisters.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Like hundreds of Slater sisters that kept turning up.
Yeah, it's like, oh, another one's just popped up. There we are.
I think, families are a source of drama a lot of the time, though, aren't they? Mm-hmm.
And I was really interested.
You can confirm none of your sisters are dead.
No, my sisters are my sisters are lovely, and we all get on very well. And there is no resemblance to them of any of the characters in the book at all, as far as I'm aware, except maybe inadvertently.
I think we're allowing you to inadvertently write things in. I think that's fair.
That's allowed.
So going back to the thing about having female protagonists and female characters, I'm aware that when you first wrote The Flood, it was quite a different book. It had brothers in it, it had more male characters, and it changed quite considerably. Yes. And I wondered whether that was something that happened with this one as well, or whether it was a more forthright writing process in terms of these are the people and this is what happens.
It was a much more streamlined thing. I think the thing about The Flood was that it took me so long, and it went through years and years, and it went through different writing groups, and then I had to send it out to agents, and I was revising it while I was sending it to agents, and then I got an agent, and then the agent had some changes and edits for it, so it went through that again, and then it went to one more chapter for publishers, and they had some edits, and then my editor went on maternity leave, and the new editor had some more edits. So it was really quite a big, complicated process. And to be honest, it's the Flood as it was when I first conceived of it, and when it finally came out in print, was substantially different and also substantially better, I have to say. You know, everything they said about it was absolutely on the money and needed changing. Whereas for Little Girls Tell Tales, I had my agent and the editor there from right at the start. So from the moment when I was sending them synopsis, they were saying, no, that's not going to work. You need to fix this bit and this bit and this bit. And so it was a more streamlined process in one way. And it meant that I was kind of changing things as I went along, rather than having to go through and do huge sweeping changes afterwards. There's a couple of characters who disappeared, and a couple got merged into other people, but more or less everyone stayed roughly the same as they started out in this one. There weren't any huge names changes or gender changes or anything else like that.
Did you find it easier to write a mystery this time round, with this being your second in this genre?
No, I found it very, very difficult. And in fact, it's not something I want to really brag about, but I was writing a completely different book set up on a Scottish island in the middle of nowhere. And it was and with a completely different plot and different characters and everything. And I got about 2/3 of the way through, and I just stalled, and I could not make it work. And even with my editor helping me and my agent helping me, we could not get it to be fixed. And eventually, I kind of threw my hands up a little bit and said, right, I'm just going to start a new one completely from scratch, which was, I mean, it worked out in the end, but I would not recommend this to anyone at all as a way to work, because I essentially pulled a draft together in a ridiculously short amount of time, and it was difficult and painful and all the rest of it, I know, but it worked out all right in the end. Yeah, but yes, this time I'm not going to be so unprepared next time. Yes, but in answer to the question, no, it doesn't seem to get any easier writing books, and I don't know why not. It's like every time I start writing a book, I've somehow forgotten completely how to write a book. I don't understand.
Do you have to write more to a time scale now that you do have your editors and your publishers and you're tied in with things like that?
In some ways I do, but also everything's been so up in the air at the moment. I originally signed with Avon Publishers, and then they split off into different sections, and one more chapter was created, which is their one of their digital publishing houses. So there was a little bit of upheaval going on there, and like I say, my original editor, who was fantastic, went off on maternity leave, and I got another editor who's also fantastic. I've been so lucky with editors, I shouldn't complain. I've had an absolute whale of a time. And then suddenly, you know, we've got a global pandemic, and we don't know what's going to be happening with book sales and all the rest of it, and all publishing's a bit fraught. So honestly, I'm not sure, and it tends to be, you know, I've been kind of just trying to write to my own pace and get things done. And I've got my my editor, who is lovely, but will also poke me with sticks when I'm being too slow. If she's like, yeah, you need to pull your finger out and actually get something written. Come on. Yeah.
That seems fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue. I can't argue with her. She is right. I do need to pull my finger out and do the work quite often.
So in terms of this book, and writing it and creating it, a lot of the characters in The Flood, and I know I've talked about that quite a lot now, but because there are some similar things in there.
That's all right.
Sorry?
Oh, I was just saying it's all right. I don't mind talking about either of them. I'm quite happy about that.
I think that a lot of the characters in The Flood were quite well rounded, in that they had
thank you,
good points, and then they had flaws, but a lot of them weren't particularly likable. There was is that the same sort of thing again? Are you writing those kind of characters? Are there characters that you like, or ones that you love to hate and things like that?
It is difficult. I mean, I love them all, but I have to admit that some of them are more likable than others. The main character, Rosalie, she's dealing with the fallout because her wife died quite recently, and she's become a shut-in and staying at home and not going out. She's been practicing social distancing since before it was cool, and so she's still going through this grieving process, and then she meets this woman who just shows up on her doorstep, and obviously has her own grief as well, because she's trying to find her sister, and for all she knows, you know, her sister might be dead or she might not be dead, and it's all a bit of a thing for her as well. And at the same time, Rosalie's brother Darlin comes home, and they've been estranged for quite a while. So there's some fun tensions going on there as well. And I think Darlin is definitely the least likable of all the characters. I have had this confirmed from people who've read the book. It's like, God, he's annoying. Just so annoying all the time. I don't know if I meant him to be quite so annoying, but just seems to come naturally to me. But I make my characters more whiny and annoying than I mean them to be.
It makes them quite lifelike, though.
Yeah.
Because even the sorry.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, even the characters that are ostensibly good characters are not necessarily nice people.
No,
and
exactly.
I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and that's definitely what I'm aiming for, because it doesn't happen in real life that you have people who are one thing or the other. Everyone's on a gradient somewhere. So I really wanted to try and hit sort of rounded, nuanced characters, and I hope I've succeeded at least a little bit in some ways now and again.
I mean, I certainly think that one of your strengths is in creating very rounded characters. So I'm sure that this one will be the same. But also, your descriptions are always really, really well laid out, and they really draw you in. Like in The Flood, I felt like I was in water all the time when I was reading it.
A soggy book. It's just
very soggy.
It's all damp all the time. Yeah, there's a lot of that as well. They spend the characters in Little Girls Tell Tales spend quite a lot of their time in their wellies, tromping around in the curraghs, in the bogs, the wetlands, and so it is also it's not quite as damp, I would say, but it is quite a soggy book as well.
It's another wet sister.
Yes, if you must describe it as such, it is wet and it contains sisters. It is a wet sisters book, but I would really appreciate if that hashtag did not catch on.
And of course, we're waiting for the third one as well in the Wet Sisters trilogy. But you have been signed up for 3 books. That's correct, isn't it? It's a 3-book deal.
It was a 2-book deal. So at the moment, it's again, it's up in the air, and my people are talking to their people, as it were, and we're hoping to get at least another book with one more chapter, because they've been fantastic for me. They've been really, really great. They've done wonderful work with editing, and the covers are just beautiful. You can see beautiful covers, and they're really lovely to work with as well. So I would love to stay with them for however many books they'll have of me. But again, you can never tell. It's all a bit weird for right now, isn't it?
It is. Do you have an idea in the pipeline? Will you be revisiting what I can only imagine will be a very wet Scottish island?
Well, it is another island, and it's closer to home. I would like to write a book set on the Calf of Man, and specifically, you know, that we were talking about that potential idea of our little writing group going out for a weekend writing retreat on the Calf of Man. Well, I thought that would be uninteresting sort of position to put everyone in for a murder mystery, using completely fictionalized characters, not outright in group, obviously, especially if any of them are listening right now.
I mean, I'm absolutely claiming this as my idea.
Yeah.
I have inspired this novel. I expect full acknowledgements.
So the idea is, they get stuck out there, and there's a moider, and the storm comes in, and they can't get off the island, and the helicopter can't come rescue them, and it's all
So it's another sort of locked room.
Another locked room. I am quite fond of those.
It's perfect.
Yeah. So
I love those. Those are my favourite mystery.
They're my favourite as well. I love having a small cast of characters, and only X number of people could possibly have done it. And the how of it is just as much fun as the who as well. Those are always my favourite types.
Is that why there was a flood in the first one, to keep the cast small and isolated?
100%. The flood was completely a device in order for me to isolate the town and give it a reason, because it's more difficult these days, isn't it? Everyone's got mobile phones. Everyone can drive everywhere really quickly. The locked room drama has not so much become more difficult. It's just evolved in a different way. So people have to be a bit more creative to stay one step ahead of everything that's happened. And short of writing historical fiction, historical crime fiction, which I'm not completely sure I'd be able to do, since I have a well-established aversion to doing any research about anything.
I would argue with that, because I keep mentioning that this is your second mystery novel, because of course you have published before under Reiki Keg.
That's me.
And those were horror novels.
Mm-hmm.
But you did one set again on the Isle of Man during World War II in the internment camp.
Yes.
That was very well researched, and it could almost have been, a fictionalized period piece about that, and then zombies happened. But it was very well researched. So I think you're selling yourself short on the research front.
I am really glad that it came across as well researched, because I I found out as much as I could realistically get away with, and then I just kind of flung myself into the project headlong, and I made up an awful lot of details, and then only went back and kind of fact-checked them afterwards. And if there was anything that was like, oh no, that's definitely incorrect, that couldn't possibly happen, I took it out. But other than that, there's quite a lot which is probably no one's called me on it yet. No one's come up to me and said, oi, this is actually bobbins. You've made this up from beginning to end. But, I'm waiting for that day. I'm sure someone will at some point.
Yeah. So again, that was set in the internment camp, so it was an enclosed space with a small cast of characters. And the same with Terror Island, which was an island, small cast of characters. This one is not. I mean, the Isle of Man is, compared to the world, is relatively small. But, we do have tens of thousands of people living here. Mm-hmm. And so how did you cope with having that sort of scope?
It was more tricky, but the way I kind of went at it was, because the murder happened 20 years ago, and that's where everyone's focus is. It was able to kind of see the past as a pocket. Does that sound too pretentious? It was like there's a certain set amount of time when this happened, and there's only a certain number of people who could feasibly have been here during that time period. And so I kind of used that idea of it, rather than a locked room, a locked period of time. So I was using the historical narrative as a device there, rather than actually physically trapping people. I didn't think I could get away with trapping them all in the Kurgs for any amount of time. I did consider it.
So that would become a theme in your books if you kept them in.
Oh no, for no reason. All the roads are closed. Again.
So were there any other difficulties other than, trying to come up with a synopsis in the first place and having it slightly larger scope-wise? Were there any other difficulties in putting this one together?
Putting it together in a hurry was a daft idea. And I'm trying to think what else. And the whole global situation has been weird. Trying to promote a book during a pandemic is a real thing I didn't expect to ever be doing.
Everyone's stuck in reading. Book sales have gone up, so you never know.
It's true. It's a bit of an odd time, and we are still having a launch party. Having our launch party on Friday, if anyone via Zoom, which we're still figuring out the logistics of. I'm sure it'll be fine. Yes. But yeah, actually writing the daft thing was once I sat down, put bum to chair, was a fairly straightforward bit. I found one of the white noise machines where I could just put my headphones on and get my head down, and I had to really set myself some firm, solid limits. Especially when I realized, I was not going to turn the first draft on time unless I could churn out, I think it was 2,000 words a day. At one point I had to do for about 2 weeks. Yeah. And wow. Yeah, so that was difficult. And I was working full time at the same time. And of course got family and all that sort of thing. I mean, everyone's got these external factors, but like I said, I would not attempt to do it that way again. That was a silly, a silly rookie mistake of not allowing myself adequate time to write, and it ended up being a sprint rather than a marathon, but kind of a marathon distance compressed into a sprinting time.
Oh. So what kind of conditions do you like to write in? So you mentioned your white noise machine. Are there any other tricks and tips for people who just need to knuckle down?
Honestly, I wish I knew. I wish I knew what tricks could make me sit down and write, because it's
I mean, if we knew, we could market
yes,
it.
Exactly.
I suppose.
Put it in a bottle and sell it to everyone. And I've tried all sorts of things. I've tried giving myself rewards. I've tried excessive snacking between paragraphs. I've tried just putting on my headphones and putting my head down and blocking out everything else. I've got a writing desk which I can't use right now because it's covered in books and things. But I think the best thing I've ever done for myself, apart from learn to touch type, was giving myself the ability to write anywhere. A lot of times you can fall into a trap of, oh, I must be sitting in the exact perfect place and have my headphones and have the perfect playlist and also the right cup of tea, and the sun must be in exactly the right spot so it's not too warm and not too cold, and only then can I write. And that's just not really feasible when you got a full-time job and kids and all the rest of it. You got you have to kind of snatch moments when you can, and I'm quite lucky in that way because I've got the ability to just sit down. It's like, oh, I have 5 minutes, I'm just gonna sit down and write some of this. And also I can use my laptop or pen and paper. I don't have a preference. So I think flexibility is going to be my one word answer to that.
Yes. And presumably you wouldn't be doing this if you didn't enjoy it. So
oh, yeah.
As well as some of the difficulties in writing it, what were some of the good parts?
The good parts, when it's flowing, when it's lovely, and you're like, God, I could do this forever. It's brilliant. And those times are few and far between, but sometimes they do crop up and they make it all worthwhile sometimes. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth, and sometimes it's like walking when your shoes are full of horrible pointy stones and all the rest of it. But and it's just, I would honestly say the best bit of it is once it's done and it's out in the world and you can go and talk to people about it, because you're no longer sitting there hunched over your keyboard. trying to make your word count for the day, and you can go and talk to people, and people start telling you how much they're enjoying it, which is a weird experience for me, but I'm very much enjoying it. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you're getting people telling you how good these are. It is getting some really lovely reviews.
It's
I've
fantastic.
read some of them,
Yeah.
and I have to be careful of the spoilers.
Oh yes, the old
people seem to
spoilerinos.
really enjoy it.
Yeah, I am.
Yes.
I'm super glad. Everyone's been really nice and supportive about it, and yeah, it's grand.
You have a really lovely writing style.
Oh, thank you.
It's your novels. They're not simple, but they're easy to read in that they flow really well, and they're so pacey that you can just sit down and just read right through it and lose track of time, because it just keeps on going and pulling you in. And I just wondered, has it taken you a long time to sort of get to that style and to master that, or is it just something that you have naturally and we can all be jealous of?
No, don't be jealous of it. It is not something that's ever come naturally to me. Finding my own writing voice is something I have struggled with for so long, because I've spent my entire life copying other people and copying other styles, and eventually it kind of fudged together into what it is now. And I've always been really worried about this. I've always said, well, everyone's got their own unique voice. Well, if I just have a really boring voice, like the equivalent of the Father Ted fella who's like, this is my talking voice, and that's my writing style, and that's what comes naturally to me. I'm really worried about that. I've forgotten my point now, but I'm really glad that it doesn't come across like that. It is something that I've consciously tried to work towards, and yeah, it's just been by emulating other better writers and seeing how they do the flowing thing, because there's nothing nicer than picking up a book and that sense of relief you get when you're 2 pages in and you're like, oh, thank goodness, these sentences are good and strong and flowing, and I can read this, and yeah, you feel like you're in good hands, and that's something I've always aspired to.
I definitely think that you've achieved that.
Thank you.
Certainly with The Flood, and I'm going to assume with this one, unless you've had a dramatic backslide in quality.
Who knows? It could be. I can't really judge. I'm too close to it.
But yeah, just your writing style coupled with how well you weave descriptions into the books are really, really good. And I'm very excited to see how the Currachs comes across, which is interesting because I did notice on some of the reviews that people were like, I had to look up what Currachs were.
Yes.
And of course on the Isle of Man you don't think about things like that. You don't think about sort of Manx dialect. And did you have to think about that quite a lot in terms of making sure they understood what that was and what that meant?
Yeah, it's just occasionally I'd say something and I wouldn't realise that it wasn't actually something that everyday people say. Like skeet was one that got flagged up. Yeah, and I referred to someone as a complete shower, and got a note back saying I don't understand this. It's like, oh, sorry, I thought everyone said that. So yeah, just little bits and pieces, and also, just when you're talking about roads and stuff, because I'd say things like, oh, they're going over the mountain, they're taking the coast road, and everyone automatically knows where those things are. But I was thinking like, oh, should I put some extra description in this to kind of say what this bit is? And I'm sure there'll be Manx people reading it. It's like, why are you describing what the mountain road is? Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone knows.
We only have one mountain.
Yes,
what other roads could it possibly be?
Exactly. I'm also really worried that I've got some of the geography wrong and someone's going to call me on it and be like, hey, there's no trees in this part of the island. What are you playing at? You said they drove past this beach and there was this here and there isn't that there. So why did you write it like that? It's like, because I got my beaches confused.
I think you can claim artistic license.
I do constantly.
Well, I think we've talked for about half an hour-ish now,
Yes.
so we should probably wrap that up. But thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to add
No,
to this?
just thank you very much for listening and listening to me wibble on about things. And yeah, it's available for pre-order up until the release date of Friday the 29th of May. It's Little Girls Tell Tales, and if you do want to order it, please contact your local independent bookshop. If you're on the Isle of Man, or if you're not on the Isle of Man even, and you fancy a signed copy, contact Bridge Bookshop on their website, or give them a call. They're really nice. They always answer.
We can post the details when we post
that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Technology.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone is free on the evening of the Friday the 29th, we're going to be having a launch party via Zoom. So anyone wants to drop in then, please do.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for letting me chat to you about this book. And
Thank you for
very excited to have a read of it and to have inspired the next book.
Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes. It's possible I might, it might all go belly up and I have to completely do something different at the last minute again. But hopefully,
Just chuck some sisters in it.
Yes,
put them in the
sisters.
sea.
Yeah, soggy sisters. That's the best
all you
way
need.
to do. No, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later. Bye.